see the pattern I can relate to. So I'm actually going to sit down because it's easier to drive from here. Basically, every other time that we've done problems, you've pretty much known what kind of problem it's going to be based on what the week was. I now have in this slide pack a whole heap of different problems, some of which might have been on past exams, some of them won't have been. And basically the only hint that you have is the subject matter for the problem. What I am going to suggest that we do is this, that somebody can be brave and just pick something. We'll go and we'll look at what that problem is. I'm then going to give you a few minutes with a paper and a pen, which I hope you have, for you to just bash out what you think an answer would be. Okay? And then I will give you a 1 minute bell, basically. This is going to be really rushed, so you'll have, 3 or 4 minutes, something like that. I'll give you a 1 minute bell, and at the end of that 1 minute, we'll then talk about what the answer is. For these ones, I do have a kind of answer. This is one of the reasons you haven't got this pack until now. I will share this pack at the same time I put the recording up. Some of you will find it useful. For those of you who are on OUA listening or people who didn't come to class, I strongly recommend that you actually play the game the same way as people are in the class, that just clicking through to the next slide, you'll get confirmation bias really quickly. On Sunday night, there will be a tute. We've had actually no recordings for the tute for weeks because we've only had 2 attendees, or 3 at the most, for the last few. But on Sunday night, we will continue doing whatever problems are in here for this Sunday night. So any of you who can join us at 6:30 on Sunday night would be very welcome. And again, more practice. So, anybody want to pick a pop culture or other reference and we'll do a question? You want the person?
The present.
The present. Everybody wants a present. Can you be legally bound to give a promise, to keep a promise to give a gift to someone? All right. So you at home, just keep this on in real time. You write down your answer. And unless you're very unlucky, I won't sing or add any music or anything like that. Question. Have a go at writing down an answer to it. I'll give you a 1 minute bell. Oops, sorry. I just thought I'd make it more stressful in the room than it will be in the exam. Just to demonstrate that I am a sociopath, or so that actually when it comes to doing the exam, you'll be like, oh, how cool is this? It's nice and quiet. There's no clock ticking. There's no cat randomly saying things. Oh no, what's going to happen?
Oh, that was
It was disappointing, really, wasn't it? All right. Talk to your neighbour. Talk to your neighbours. What do you reckon? What have you got? Of course, you at home can't talk to a neighbour, so.
So for some consideration. Yeah. So consideration has a good conversation in this case with them getting
Okay, wind it up a little bit. So, just quickly, who, just general show of hands, you do not have to agree with your neighbours, by the way. What do we reckon? Can you be legally bound to give a gift to somebody? Yes? No? Okay. Interesting. So why not? Anybody prepared to share with a wider group? Why not? I didn't see anybody saying yes.
Yeah.
You did. Oh, you said that.
No, I'll say no.
Okay.
But I'll share.
Okay, please share.
We were saying that there was no consideration.
Yep.
As a gift. So consideration has to move from the promisee, which in this case would be the person receiving the gift, and if they're receiving the gift, they're probably not giving any consideration.
Spot on. Anything else? Okay. You might have thought about a deed. So, in fact, you can be, the actual short answer to the question is yes, you can actually set something up so that somebody is bound to give a gift, to keep their promise to give a gift, but you would need them to enter into a deed for exactly the reason that was your reason why you couldn't under the common law, because there is no consideration. You might also, in an answer about what the problems are, you might address intention. So the nature of a gift is not contractual. It suggests that there is no intention to be bound. But otherwise, good. So did you have cases in there in relation to consideration?
Yeah.
So you'd be wanting to enforce your answer with, so your statement about consideration with a case, and statements in relation to intention also, if you were going to use those.
There was a case in Torts where there was this dude who was trying to give his brother his wife trying to live.
No, I don't know it. I actually have a memory of it vaguely, but So when you think about it, a will is a contractually binding gift. Of course, you can revoke it at any time up until you die or cease to have capacity to make a new will, and so it's only effective on your death. But again, that's why wills themselves tend to create trusts, or they come out of the equity space.
Stuff like a form of acceptance.
Well, from the offeror, it's a condition precedent to the offer, to the agreement being bound and made. But a number of the cases that we looked at involved somebody making a promise. So Ogilvy and Ryan, for example, the gentleman made a promise that he would leave the property to the young lady, but he just didn't get around to putting it in his will. Now, in that case, it wasn't found to be a contract. The promise wasn't contractual, but there was an estoppel that prevented the family from acting on it until for the rest of her life. Again, it's an old case, so I'm not sure it'd come out the same way this time around. So, sorry. All right, let's pick something else. That was a nice, easy little one to start off with. We can get something meatier. We can do at least a couple more before time to go home, I reckon.
Lost in space.
Lost in Space, Danger Will Robinson. This is a bit more like it. So, Dr. Smith has recently discussed the purchase of a small farm on the south coast of Victoria with his friend Will Robinson, who's only ever used the property as a holiday house. Will said he would accept a 10% deposit for the purchase. Dr. Smith explained that he needed to take possession immediately as he had nowhere else to live. At no time was there any document signed. Dr. Smith paid the deposit and Will gave him the keys. The next day, Dr. Smith moved in. He then quickly began various home improvements, building a secret laboratory for building robots and establishing a vineyard on the premises. Will now wants Dr. Smith to leave the farm. Whoops, I don't want to go just yet. I want you to advise Will. You will have the scenario back, absolutely. Sorry, I thought I had another slide in between. Clearly I didn't. There's the scenario. I'm going to give you 3 minutes before I turn that clock on. So it's 5 minutes all up. You can't phone a friend, Johnny.
Can't Google.
No Googling, no phone a friend. Two minutes to go. Okay, just before you even talk to anybody, just consensus, we'll kick Dr. Smith off? Yes? No? Okay, so mostly yeses, but not entirely. Have a chat amongst your neighbours. Talk about where it is. See if you change minds. So, how did you approach it? What would you do?
My understanding is
Not sure. All right, has anybody changed their mind? No.
Yes, but.
Yes, but. So no straight mind changing yet. All right, can we just start by? I'm going to crowdsource an answer a bit because we'll run out of time. So, issue. What do we think the key issues are in relation to this one?
Yeah.
Certainty? So we've got formality as well. Anything else? Part consideration. So, or whether there's adequate consideration. So I'm just going to try and work out how.
Part performance, sorry, I didn't say.
Or part performance. And so what does part performance go to? Usually. So whether there's an estoppel. So potentially, oh sorry, now hopefully that's better. Hopefully my recording's still going. All right, let me just try and make this manageable. So let's have a look at the certainty issue came up first. So what is your particular concern about certainty? Okay.
And it's like the rights and responsibilities of both parties to develop that.
Yeah, okay, so either we've got to, so there's some basic assumptions we can probably make there, like the fact that they can calculate 10% suggests that they can calculate the whole of the price, for example.
Yeah, I understand like timeline,
But-
when would it be due?
Yeah.
What payments, like, that sort of thing, yeah.
So we either have to make assumptions that there's that they've got certainty around that, or we raise it as an issue. And I think you are right to raise it as an issue. It looks completely vague, particularly as he's making modifications and things like that at the same time. Formality was the next one that got raised. What would we see as being a formalities issue there? It's land, absolutely. So the Instruments Act says you cannot transfer land or create an interest in land unless you have a document that is signed. And so this lack of documentation absolutely deals with that. So then the next question becomes in relation to that, is that fatal to Dr. Smith's case? Or does that alone provide Will Robinson with the ability to kick him out? The consideration or part performance issue. So how does that fit in that context then? Yeah. So if he hadn't paid any money yet, it would be easier, but the fact that he has paid some money, again, we don't know anything about the terms. That money might in fact be refundable. What about the work that he's done on the property? Do we need more information, or did anybody take the work that he's done on the property into account? Yep, you did. So how did you account for it?
I'm not sure if this terminology is right, but I call it acts done on reliance of
So,
the contract.
Acts done on reliance of the contract. So there are two ways we could look at the work that was done. Was that some benefit that Dr. Smith gave to Will, so the owner of the property? Planting a vineyard could in fact increase the value of the property in some way. I don't know, building a secret laboratory for making robots. I don't know. I think that's pretty cool, personally, but I don't know if Will Robinson's as geeky as me. Do those facts remind you of any of the cases? Because that could be a place. Curry and Curry could be one. In fact, I hadn't thought of that, but that's definitely a good one. Beaton and McDivitt. So, but we don't know whether Will asked him to build a vineyard or not. Okay, so issues. We've got a range of different issues there. They go with corresponding rules. So I've kind of spoken about them as we go. So anybody want to have a go at applying the rules that we've spoken about to this and to come up with a conclusion? Isn't it great that you don't have like group exams and that you don't? Can you imagine sitting around a big table and just being asked questions? Let's have a look. Sorry. How does this work? All right. So, that ticking's really going to annoy me now. Another issue actually could be intention. They're friends. The fact that there is no written agreement also suggests that it might have never been intended to be a binding arrangement, but I think that we can probably that doesn't actually stop us from kicking him off the property, particularly if it wasn't intended to be binding in the first place. Certainty, identifying a price, we've spoken about that. Rules come from Homogeneous, from Beaton and McDivitt. Curry and Courier is an excellent case there. Statute of Frauds as well, or the successor legislation in this case would be Section 126 of the Instruments Act. You might want to distinguish McDivitt if you were going to apply that. So there might be improvements, but there's no evidence that they were asked for. But if you were making an assumption that he asked for the planting of a vineyard, that would be fine. But even so, McDivitt, the majority found that there was no consideration anyway. And the other difference with McDivitt is there wasn't a deposit that had been paid. So ultimately, I think on the side of right here is that Will's on pretty strong ground to get rid of Dr. Smith. But I could see this one argued equally the other way. So again, you probably need to make a few more assumptions along the way. Now see, we came up with, in that very brief conversation, a number of things that I didn't have on my slide. And they're perfectly valid, and I tended to put these slides together based on the things that people don't say, and then sometimes I get it completely wrong, so see how we go. All right, do we have time for one more? Which one is it? 8:22. I'd like to do one more if you're happy to do that, and then I can continue this on Sunday night. Pick anything. I'll tell you, but I'll just give you less time to do it. Rocky Horror, one of my favourites. Let's make you a man. Brad agrees to lend some money to Frank, provided that Janet guarantees Frank's performance under a loan agreement. Brad and Janet have been friends for a long time and Brad trusts her word. He asks you whether or not he should prepare a guarantee or not. Guarantee agreement or a guarantee document, you can read that as. What advice can you give him? Please use some case law to illustrate your answer. Dot it out furiously now and we'll go straight to the answer in about 2 minutes' time. I do not know what that noise is. You don't think of this clock when you're in the exam and think, oh, so glad I don't have that clock. Or then you'll be running out of time thinking, where's my clock? I need my clock. Okay, let's launch straight into it. Why might you recommend a formal guarantee?
Instruments Act says you have to. Oh, nice.
It's over. It's all over. No, it'll come back again, I hope. Oh no, that's just the system turning off.
That's what the beeping was.
Warning us. There we go. So, form guarantee. So we need to know where it happened. You might have noticed the question didn't actually say where it was. So you would, a good answer there would articulate the assumption that it was in Victoria and go straight to that. A really good answer might actually say, well, I'm going to assume it's in Victoria because in the other states it's different, and work to there. All right. A good answer here would also talk about the advantages of certainty if you had documented the arrangement. You might also think about consideration. Janet's not actually a party to the contract, the underlying contract, so what is the benefit for her? Again, you can get around, and this is why guarantees are usually in deeds, is to make sure that there is no concern about the guarantee. You might also talk about the difference between a guarantee and an indemnity and make sure, although really actually if you're acting for Brad, doesn't really matter so much, Brad's the one who's asked you the question. If that question was then turned around and asking Janet if it's a good idea or not to do that, you might talk about the difference between a guarantee and an indemnity. Sorry, we're right at the end. On Sunday night, I will continue going through the slide pack. I would love it if you would like to be there. If I've got more than 4 of you, I will record it. If I don't, I probably won't, because we end up with it just being more personal conversations if it's not. Thank you very much for a fabulous semester. I have really enjoyed myself this semester. I hope you have too, and that you've learned something. And hopefully you didn't like it so much that you come back next semester. That is my plan for you all. So congratulations, and you know how to find me. So please do that if I can help you at all. But thank you. And if anybody wants to go to the pub for a